Good. So we're talking about the meaning of love. We've had a good brainstorm, and the reason I wanted us to brainstorm and to get together lots of really different definitions of love and different examples of love is so that we don't get too narrow too quickly, too abstract. So this is a danger when you're talking about any topic. You give a definition and you're kind of working very deductively. Oh, we've got this definition, this is what it is. It's an extra danger for a Christian group thinking about love, because we kind of go into pious, devotional mode. Oh, love is serving the other and self-sacrifice. Well, it is, but it's not only that, as we'll go on to see now. So we've collected together a great pot of definitions. Love is caring, love is feeling, love is acting, love is making decisions. We've got another great pool of examples of different ways the word love is used in ordinary language, and it's incredibly varied. Yeah, we've just said you can love a person, a grandmother, a child, an activity, what someone else has done. You can love a pet, you can love your country, you can love chocolate, you can love a state in life, you can love knowledge and words and ideas and truth. The word love is very elastic, in English certainly, and in many languages. And actually, it's not just the word, the meaning of love is very rich and broad. And we want to keep that big picture of love before we start going into some interesting and slightly over-tidy definitions. Okay? We're talking about all these things. Having said that, the reason I've said that is because I want to start off. We've got to start somewhere. Let's give two complementary classical definitions of love. And you'll see how, in fact, you can apply them more or less to your grandmother, to truth, to chocolate, to a state of being, to your beloved. You can go a long way with these two classical definitions. But I'm going to give them both together, because they need to go together. Love is, first, that which seeks union. Love seeks union. And secondly, the second definition, love seeks the good of the other. Love seeks the good of the other. Now, I've just given you the definitions. Let me explain a bit. First, love seeks union. One definition of love is that it is the desire to be united with something, with what we love, with what we seek. You can apply it to the examples above, and it shows you again how elastic and rich and interesting this is. Yeah, I can love my spouse with my whole heart, longing to be together with my husband or wife, or with my children. Yeah, I can love a bar of chocolate, longing to take and consume and be united with that bar of chocolate. And you could actually use the same definition for both my love for my beloved and my love for my bar of chocolate. You see, I know it's slightly ridiculous, but it's a love that's seeking something for myself, but not just to consume, but to be one with, to share in, to be part of. Love is in so many different ways and different dimensions and different facets. Love is this desire for union, and you can apply it in lots of different ways. And let's just stay focused on the person, as in interpersonal love, because of course that's the focus. What's part of the way I love you as a friend, as a lover, as a brother, as a sister? It's wanting to be with you. Wanting to share with you. It's loving being with you. This is surely part of love, isn't it? Love seeks union. But also, the second definition, or the second half of the definition, is love isn't just me wanting to be with you for what I can get. Love is also seeking the good of the other. It's a desire to help you because I care for you. It's wanting to help you and not just to take you for myself. It's, I care for you. We had this in our earlier definitions. I desire to help you. I want to serve you. I love you not just because of what you can give to me, as a friend, as a family member, as a helper, as a bank manager, as my beloved who has promised to never stop loving me. I love you for you in yourself. I want to help you because of who you are, and not just because of who you are to me. So, quick summary here in very traditional classical definitions, nothing to do with religion or God yet. Love is the desire for union, and love is the desire to help. I'm seeking unity, and I'm seeking to help and bless and serve you. Let's put this into ordinary language, not English now, but some of you have heard this, I've used this in Sycamore before, but there's two ways of saying love in Italian, aren't there? Yeah? Marco?
There is amare, which is the stronger one.
Yep.
Or volere bene,
Yep.
which is...
Yep. So,
it's the same.
yes, it's the same. Who else is Italian here? Who else speaks Italian? Yeah? Great. So, if I love you, I can say ti amo. Ti amo. You, I love you. Ti amo. Very simple. It's like the English word I love. And it's to do with affection and care and falling in love. But there's another Italian phrase which we don't have as a phrase in England, which is ti voglio bene. Ti voglio bene. You, I wish good for. It's literally to wish good for someone, to wish well for someone, to hope and pray and act so that things will work out well for you. You see, it's more about the you than the me. And it's interesting in Italian, isn't it? When would you use ti voglio bene?
You can use ti voglio bene for friends, or let's say a child would say to a mom, or vice versa. But ti amo is only for lovers.
Lovers and romantic love,
yes,
and
exactly. That's romantic love. Yeah. Excuse me.
Also for God, we use it.
Well, that's also true.
Interesting. Yeah. So would your normal "I love you" God, would it be ti amo or ti voglio bene?
Only ti amo.
Ti amo. Great. So ti amo, like the English "I love," is romantic love, affection, the beloved, husband and wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, and God. So it's the seeking union. It's the heart to heart. Very important. But how lovely the Italians have this phrase "ti voglio bene," which you would reserve for a friend. You wouldn't say it on the first day you met someone, would you?
Ti voglio bene?
Yeah.
No.
It's got quite a deep meaning, in other words. I've got to know you as a friend, and I would say ti voglio bene. And I would say to my parent as a child, ti voglio bene. It's affectionate. It's not superficial, but it's different from ti amo. Okay. So we've got two definitions of love. Let me then, all I'm going to do is hop around with some ideas and definitions now. What I'm going to say this evening is not very tidy. Let's connect those two classical definitions with the teaching of Pope Benedict in his encyclical Deus Caritas Est, Emeritus Pope Benedict, Deus Caritas Est, which was his first encyclical when he was Pope. He was Pope in 2005, so I can't remember if it was 2005 or 2006. Sorry?
2005.
It was 5. Thank you. Wonderful. It's two documents stitched together. So the section about the meaning of love, the kind of philosophical section, please read. If you read one thing after this evening, I'd recommend that. He speaks really in the same way with a double definition. Pope Benedict speaks about the love of Eros. It makes us think in English of erotic love, but it's much broader than what we mean in English by erotic. Eros here, the love of Eros, it doesn't just mean sexual, erotic, romantic love. It means, as we were saying earlier, a love that seeks union. a love that wants to be with the other, to find my happiness in a communion with you, whoever you are, my lover, my friend, my parent, but is longing to be with you for the sake of the joy and the happiness of communion. It's me finding my self-fulfillment, my happiness, with you, the other, through the relationship. So it's Eros, for Pope Benedict, is the love that seeks union. And he speaks about the intoxication of love. We kind of come out of ourselves into this relationship. We go above ourselves. Pope Benedict speaks about an ascending love, a love that goes from myself up towards this beautiful relationship with the other. So it's very idealised, but the point is to help us understand what's at the heart of many, many relationships. Yeah. I'm kind to my 3-year-old child because I ought to be as a parent. Yes, parental love of service. But I love being with my 3-year-old when they're not throwing up on me and waking me up at 3 a.m. Yeah? There's an affection and a longing to hug and hold and be with and share the life of my little child, as much as to be with my husband or wife, with my best friend. Erotic love, in this broad meaning, is simply the love that seeks union. But then Pope Benedict speaks about the other half. He speaks about agape. Agape, another Greek word, which we have in the New Testament, a key word for Jesus when he speaks about love. Agape is our care for the other person, our concern for the other. Now, of course, I want to care, I desire to care, so in one sense it is to do with my desires, but it's a care that's not thinking about what I can receive, it's thinking about what I can give to the other and give to the relationship. And it might involve not taking and receiving, but renunciation and service and sacrifice. And I might not so much find myself, but lose myself, because this is costing me time or money or effort or emotional sacrifice. So Pope Benedict speaks here about a descending love, not in a negative sense, but I have to step out of myself and, as it were, go down on my knees to serve you, to be willing to roll my sleeves up and get my hands dirty. It's a sacrificial love, a love of service, when I might not get the rewards. Again, how many couples with their children, their little newborns, are losing a lot of sleep, and there is a big sacrifice. When there's a challenge in a friendship or a marriage, when you're called because of your vocation or your circumstances to make a big physical or emotional sacrifice for someone in order to help them because they need you. And you do it, yes, out of love, but it's a love that feels maybe very painful at the time. Do you see it's the same thing really? We've talked about a love of union and a love to serve the other. I've forgotten my phrase again. A love of union and a love that seeks the good of the other. And now Pope Benedict is speaking about the same pair in terms of Eros and agape. The love of communion and happiness and fulfillment, and the love of renunciation and sacrifice. And Pope Benedict says very beautifully, as human beings, we need both. Right? Not just society needs both. Of course it does. It needs people who will serve and help others. But we, each of us as an individual, I need to receive. I need to be loved. I need to find happiness in friendship, in love, in family, in community. But I also need to serve and give and sacrifice. And paradoxically, I need both in order to find my fulfillment. Because if I only take, the relationship will go sour, but also I won't find the deepest happiness I can find. So we need both, but also Pope Benedict makes a slightly different point, which is the deeper you go into one, it will necessarily lead to the other. So if you fall in love and seek this erotic love of union, you will reach a point where you need to work hard at this relationship, to overcome difficulties, to give more than you're receiving at a particular time, just as you might receive more than you give at another time. This is just the normal give and take of human relationships. But the love of Eros leads to agape always. The beautiful instinctive love that a parent has for their newborn child, usually, not always, but usually, that needs to lead to agape, the love of service, the hard, challenging grind of bringing up a child, often, and the sacrifices involved. The romantic love of boyfriend and girlfriend who fall in love and they have their first argument. Do they give up? They have to fight for their relationship sometimes. The newly married couple who are struggling in year 2 or 3, and they're learning to give as much as to receive, and to work through the difficulties, God willing. And agape, the love of service and sacrifice, needs to lead to Eros somehow. Not always today. Yeah, it's not just, oh, there will be a nice reward for you tomorrow if you make a sacrifice today. But in your whole life, you cannot just give in sacrifice. In the wholeness of your life. You want to give and be generous, especially, as we'll come on to in a minute, as a Christian. But you can't just give. You need to receive. You need, as we'll see in the second half of my talk, to know God's love. You need to be supported by friends and family in the church. So there will be moments of great sacrifice, and we shouldn't avoid them. But we need both Eros and agape. We need the love of union and the love of seeking the good of the other. Okay. Let me give you another framework. As I said, slightly random this, but we can have lots of chat and questions at the end. I'm going to continue the slightly abstract theme here. C.S. Lewis, the great Anglican academic, teacher, philosopher, theologian, communicator. He wrote a book called The Four Loves. The Four Loves. And I think this was based on some radio talks, so it's very accessible. And I'm just going to list them now. I didn't have time to do some slides, sorry, so you'll have to remember this, but you can look it up very easily, and in fact it's all very tidily on Wikipedia for you. Right? The Four Loves. So this is just to expand our framework a little bit. And in fact, the first two we can map onto Pope Benedict and put it the other way round. Pope Benedict had and has a great love for C.S. Lewis. Interesting, that connection of intellectual history. So I'm sure he got some of his own thinking and teaching from C.S. Lewis. Let me just list them. For C.S. Lewis, first, attraction or romantic love. Eros. Falling in love, being in love, the love of lovers. We're absorbed in each other. Second, charity. Agape. What C.S. Lewis calls unconditional love. Do you see how that connects with what we've just been talking about? Unconditional, meaning it's not conditional on what I can receive from you. It's unconditional. It's the love of generosity. It's loving like God, who pours himself out without expecting anything in return. It's the love of self-giving, of the servant, not the slave, the love of the servant in Christian theology in the Bible. It doesn't depend on attraction. It depends on our desire and choice, as we said at the beginning, to serve and help and love another because of who they are, because of who we are, and because of who God is and what he's asked us to do. And then the third kind of love for C.S. Lewis is what he calls the love of affection or familiarity. This is called storge in Greek. Now, you might say this is like romantic love and Eros, but this is a bit different. C.S. Lewis, by this, I think the best word really here is familiarity. The natural closeness that we feel when we share a life with someone. The best example of this is family. Not just parents loving children, but brothers and sisters and children for parents. It's the natural sympathy and bond and closeness that we feel simply when we become familiar with the people around us. It's family. It might be living in a hall of residence together. Yeah? They're not necessarily your lovers. I've fallen in love with these people. They're not necessarily people that you are called to serve for your duty or your internship or your seminary placement. You just happen to live with these people and you've grown fond of them to different degrees. But you feel a bond with them. It's the love of people who work together. Again, not always, but just you grow a bond when you work together and get to know people and get to love and trust them. Affection, familiarity. And the fourth love for C.S. Lewis is friendship, which we haven't talked about yet, which is why it's so important to bring this in. Friendship, philia, in Greek. And this, in the classical definition of Aristotle and taken up by C.S. Lewis, is when people are bound together by something they share in common. I'm your friend because we've got a common interest or activity or pursuit or values. Or it might be we just like talking to each other, but we like talking to each other. That's our common interest. It might be something as small, I shouldn't say this recklessly, as small as football or food. I know it's a god for some people. It might be something as small as football or food, a deep friendship, or something as big as religion or country or war. Yeah? But friends are united by something in common. And just think about your friendships, because you might have very different things that unite you with your friends. It's not kind of monolithic, this. You might be friends with someone because of sport, someone because of the music you share, someone because you like going out together, someone because of your faith, your Catholic faith. And it's not wrong to have friends in different categories, as it were, because friendship varies according to the things that bring us in common. So, 4 ideas about love, and just to put this visually, right? I would have liked to have some slides about this, but I didn't have time. Imagine 2 people. Where do they face? I'm rolling my hands around in the air, right? Here are 2 faces, the palms of my hands. Right? This is a symbol of the different kinds of love for C.S. Lewis. Look at the palms of my hand. Lovers, attraction, romantic love, they symbolically are facing each other. Right? They want to stare into each other's eyes. What am I in love with? You. They're facing each other. Friends, look at the palms of my hands, are next to each other, not looking at each other. They're facing forward to whatever binds them together. They're not less close than lovers. Friendship can be very, very deep. But they're not, most friends are not staring into each other's eyes all the time. They're doing something together. And it's the focus on the doing and the sharing that's what binds them together. Do you see? It's not less close. Affection, familiarity, family, look at my palms, they're facing away from each other. Back to back, united. But they're not united by a common interest. Just take my brother and sister. I'm not spending a lot of time with my brother and sister. They're getting on with their lives, I'm getting on with my life. There's a massive bond between us, but it's because we're siblings, because we have the same family. We're not staring into each other's eyes lovingly. We're not very often on a common pursuit together. We're absolutely close and united, but we're looking out into different parts of life and the world together. And charity, look at my palms, one person's getting on with, this is a bit symbolic, but I'm looking at someone, but they're not looking at me, they're looking out in the world with their own life. Meaning, it's not reciprocal, necessarily. I might care for my 6-month-old child, and they might smile at me and love me, but they're getting on with their own world, with their own life. I might care for my ageing parent, and they might be very affectionate and loving to me, but they might have dementia and forgotten who I am. So I'm caring for them, and they're not able necessarily to care for me reciprocally, but there's a profound love there. But we're not facing the same way. We're not necessarily involved in the same pursuit. I can serve and love people in so many different ways. And they're just some little symbolic ideas. Right, I'm going to pause there because I've been speaking for a moment and see if I can press pause on here. Good. So we've had some good discussion about how complex love is, and it's all very well putting these interesting definitions and categories, but in real life we're moving between all these different kinds of loving. One minute I'm loving in this way at this person, another minute I'm loving another situation, another person in a different way. But also within any given relationship there's all sorts of different kinds of loving going on. I'm a parent serving my child. I'm a parent who's a friend with my child. I'm married to someone because I've fallen in love with them. I'm a friend with my spouse because we're working together and on this common project of family life and bringing children up together. And in any 5-minute conversation you can have love and affection and romance and self-giving and seeking union. Love is incredibly rich and complex, and we're just having some of these definitions and categories in order to get us thinking about the complexity. Okay? Right, let me do 2 other things. John Paul II and then the Bible, although they overlap, of course. So another perspective, this is not so much a different definition of love, it's St John Paul II going into what you would call an anthropology, a study of the human person to understand what is it within us that is capable of this incredible gift of love and this relationship of love, the giving and the receiving, the agape and the eros. What is it about us? John Paul II speaks about what came to be known as the theology of the body, or the theology of the gift. And he worked this out in an incredible series of Wednesday audience talks, mini lectures that he gave at the beginning of his pontificate, and you can buy in a book. Sometimes it's called Theology of the Body, sometimes it's called Man and Woman, He Created Them. A really rich philosophy of the human person. Let me do this in 5 minutes. JP2 says creation points to what he calls the gift. The fact that built into the whole of creation and everything within creation, everything, every person, is the fact that this thing, this person, is created out of nothing. that its being depends on God, that it's given being or life. So built into the very nature, the very being of anything and everything is the fact that it is created, that it is a gift, that it has been given by a giver, God. So we, for us as human beings, we receive our being. We are not necessary beings. We're alive because we've been created and because God holds us in existence. And part of being a human being is becoming aware that my life is a gift. That it is conditional on being created in the first place and being held in existence at every moment through the creative love of God. So I share with every creature, everything, the fact that my being, my life is given. But what's unique, what's special about the human being is that I can come to understand and know this. So part of my being is not just to be a gift, it's to know that my life is a gift because of this incredible gift that human beings have of reflection, of self-understanding, of consciousness, of self-consciousness. So I come to know myself as a gift, and I come to know God as the one who gave me the gift of my life and holds it in being. We see all this, according to John Paul II, in the beginning of the book of Genesis, in the first 3 chapters especially. Adam is created from the dust of the earth. He's given life. And he is, it gets very technical here, but stay with me because it's so interesting. He's alone. So according to John Paul II, he has the experience of solitude. Solitude. I am me. I'm not the world. I'm not other people. There are no other people yet. I'm me. Solitude here is not a negative thing. It's the awareness of my identity. I'm me. My life is a gift. I'm distinct from the world and everything around me and the other people I might meet. Solitude and personal identity and having a self are all connected. It's not bad in itself, solitude. It's this awareness. But it leads to a recognition that I am not the rest of the world, I'm distinct and other, and therefore it leads to a longing, a need to connect with the world and with others. My solitude gives rise to a desire and a need to exist in relationship with the world and God and with others. It leads to the realization that I can give myself to another and receive from another and from God. So my solitude, which could be such a negative thing, oh no, I'm me, I'm alone, where is everyone? In fact, it's the key to realizing that I'm made for self-giving, sharing, meeting, greeting, talking, dialogue, sacrifice ultimately. So this very philosophical idea is actually something profoundly human, which I hope unlocks something in you as I'm speaking or as you go away and thinking about it. Wow, I'm me. And it's not just, oh, I happen to want to have some friends, or I want to find someone and get married one day and have kids. Something profoundly woven into my being is longing to give and to receive. I am a gift, and I long to be a gift for others. And I long to thank God for the gift that I am and that other people are. So, as you know, as you remember, I hope, in the Bible, solitude, Adam's solitude, it leads to his desire for another, Eve. It is not good that man, Adam, is alone. He longs for what in the old-fashioned English translation is called a helpmate. It doesn't mean helpmate, it means a help, a helper, a partner, who is meet old-fashioned English, appropriate for, fitting to. I need someone to be with, to share my life with. Of course, the symbol of this is marriage, Adam and Eve, husband and wife, but it's not just talking about getting married. When John Paul II speaks about self-giving and the need for another, he uses the language of spousal love, married love, but here spousal love is a symbol of all the relationships I have. And in fact, this is woven into my being, not just existentially, but because I am male or female. John Paul II says the complementarity of male and female, of man and woman, which is built into to every fibre of my being. It's not just an accident, it's not just an add-on. It's not just that I will necessarily get married and find my happiness in a spousal partnership. That's one way of living out this complementarity. But it's a symbol of the fact that I am made to relate to others, to give and to receive with others. John Paul II quote, "The human person cannot fully find himself except through a sincere gift of himself." We find ourselves, my true identity, in giving ourselves. And again, this is very abstract. This is John Paul II. Also, I like a bit of abstract thinking. But can you begin to apply this to all the ordinary relationships? Yeah? To your mum and dad this Christmas, all the joys and all the arguments, to the people you live with, to your boyfriend or girlfriend, to your people at college, to the people you meet in the street. Every single relationship, however deep or however shallow, has got something to do with your desire to give and to receive and to be in relationship. Pope Francis, lovely quote, "Life grows by being given away, and it weakens in isolation." Life grows by being given away. Do you see the lovely paradox? Yeah. So, there's a little diversion, if you like, the anthropology of John Paul II, the theology of the body, which I hope makes sense of what we've been talking about in love and helps you to understand why love is so important for us in all its complexity. And it will especially lead in to what Kerry and Ryan are going to do about the relationships and the theology of the body. And the final part of this talk. So, we've spoken about love. What is it? It's very complex. It's these two things, it's these four things in C.S. Lewis. We mustn't be over-tidy, but this is helpful. It's built into our nature. We long to love, we need to love. But, let's really go deeper now. We know as Christians, from the Bible and Christian revelation, that we are called to love in even deeper ways. It's not just the longing for union. It's not just the instinctive desire to help, to care for my children, to look after my aging parents, to be nice to my friends. There's an even deeper call to love, which we won't fully discover without the revelation of Jesus and the gift of faith. And just to jump around some of these ideas, again, this is very, very untidy. Let's look at some of the beautiful scriptures about love. That God is love. God is love. We need to be told this because it's not obvious. Okay, God is the supreme being. Okay, God, maybe I can work out philosophically as the transcendent creator, the subsistent being in himself, whatever. But to say that God is love, that this is his nature, his identity, we know this because of the teaching of Jesus. The revelation of the Scriptures. St. John, in his first letter, "We have come to know and believe the love that God has for us. God is love, and whoever abides in love abides in God, and God abides in him." That the Lord that we came to know through the revelation of the Old Testament is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger and rich in love, Psalm 145. God's special love for the poor, the widow, the orphan and the stranger in the Old Testament. The joy of the two lovers, man and woman, husband and wife, in the Song of Songs. Just the exaltation of erotic, romantic love. Everything is here in the vision of the Bible in the Old Testament. And then, in the life and the teaching and the example of Jesus, he takes us even deeper. The Sermon on the Mount, the teaching of Jesus, especially in St. Matthew's Gospel, in the Sermon on the Mount. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill them. Jesus teaching at the Last Supper about love as friendship, but divine friendship. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, says Jesus, I have called you friends, because I have made known to you everything I have learnt from my Father. That Jesus' love invites us into friendship with him and with the Most Holy Trinity. That we're called to serve sacrificially not just our children or our parents or our best friend, but the poorest of the poor. Jesus is teaching in the Last Judgment when the king says, I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came to me. The call to love those in need, the poorest of the poor. This might have been, do you see, beyond our first definitions of love, but Jesus is saying we need to expand those definitions. The Good Samaritan in Luke chapter 10. Not the best friend or the person from the same village or the person from the same religion. It was the stranger who crossed the road to help the man who had been beaten up and abandoned, and gave him care and compassion and food and clothing and money and love and support. Jesus is teaching, his hard teaching, that you must love your enemies. Matthew chapter 5. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you can be like your Father in heaven. We love our friends, we've talked about that. We love our lovers, we love our family, our brothers, we love our colleagues. We love, we give and take, but sometimes there is just giving. The giving of loving your enemy who maybe is not prepared to give you anything back. The love of the servant. Jesus says at the Last Supper, a new commandment I give you, that you love one another just as I have loved you. And what's he speaking about there? His example of going on his knees and washing the feet of his disciples. A tender love, but a sacrificial love. The love that St. Paul teaches in 1 Corinthians 13. Yes, the most popular wedding reading. 47% of you will have this reading at your weddings. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonour others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love delights in the truth. I'll use a different translation here, the old RSV. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. Wow. Do you see, we've started with some very human, everyday, literary, philosophical definitions of love, and we've expanded this love to include love for friends and neighbours and colleagues, but to see that it's an even deeper love that includes the stranger and the poor and the enemy, that it includes sharing in the love that God has given us through Jesus Christ, and being brought into the love of the Most Holy Trinity. That it's a love that's able to forgive. That it's a love that has the hope of heaven, because sometimes our loving seems impossible in this life, or we can't make sense of it, but we will be able to make sense of it one day in the light of heaven. And this is what the resurrection shows us. Yeah? That even though Jesus seemed to be defeated in his love on the cross, he gave his life completely in love. It seemed a defeat. It seemed pointless to many people. But it was vindicated, justified, glorified through the gift of the resurrection, showing that it did have meaning, even though that meaning couldn't be discovered before the light of the resurrection. So, I've done that very quickly. I've given a few quotations, and we need to go away and study the scriptures. And I've wanted to focus on some very simple, easy definitions of love. But you can see how rich love is, how complex love is, how beautiful love is, that we need to start somewhere in human experiences and in philosophy, but ultimately we need the vision of love that Jesus Christ gives us. Not just so that we think that Christian love is the only way of loving, but because the love that Jesus shows us perfects all the other loves. So it helps us to be a better friend. It helps us to be a better family member. It helps us to be a better colleague. All the natural loves that we have are fulfilled and perfected in the love of Jesus Christ. They're not rejected. And he helps us to love in all the ordinary ways that we want to love. And he helps us to start again when we fail. And he gives us a vision of love that is deeper and more life-giving, and that leads to eternal life that we couldn't have discovered without him. So I hope that we've learned something about love. We've got a greater desire to love. We're more grateful for the love that God has given us in loving us and loving us through other people. But above all, we have a greater desire to love God, to love our neighbour, and to love ourselves in return. And if we do all of that, to keep it very, very simple, we're loving with the Eros and the agape that Pope Benedict summed up for us. Okay?